Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Sean Astin returns to AwesomeCon this weekend at the Washington Convention Center. He joined me in 2015 to discuss his blockbuster career from the Goonies to Rudy to the Lord of the Rings.
Sean Astin. Hi, Jason.
Thanks for joining us on WTOP. Sean is in town for AwesomeCon, which is at the Convention Center this weekend.
I came back because it was aptly named AwesomeCon. No, it really was. I mean, the people in this around D.C. and in Virginia and everywhere they came in, they were just it was just a family affair. People were dressed up and just having a ball, having a ball. The panel was packed. I do like a panel every day where people come in and the audience gets to ask their questions. It's like a rare thing for people to get to ask their actors that they like questions. So, and it's just fantastic. I had a great time.
If it wasn't awesome, they would have to change the name, but it lives up to the name.
It'd be like semi-awesome con. Like, yeah, it could have been awesome con. It was, yeah.
If you weren't there, maybe it'd be semi-awesome con.
Well, I actually just looked through
It's a big lineup.
There's actually a ton of great people from Lord of the Rings, and then I'm one of the voices of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Raphael, right?
Raphael. I'm Raphael. How did you know?
Someone did his research.
Entertainment editors work hard behind the scenes. But this is the thing. I mean, for people who don't know what these Comic-Con things are all about, these guys, they put on a show where they take like Back to the Future or Raiders of the Lost Ark or some cool classic movie, and they are assigned different roles and asked to do it with different accents. So they'll be like, hey, play Marty as Christopher Walken. and people come in by the hundreds to sit and watch these guys just
be do Marty as Christopher Walken?
I sometimes when I have a second, I'll sit in and do whoever. Yeah, I Christopher Walken. I could do Walken, but I could also do what did they have me do? Usually they have me do like you do it as Samwise Gamgee. Can you do the McFly as
Give us McFly as Samwise.
Okay, he goes, you're my density, my destiny. So Samwise would say, you're my destiny, you're my density. Samwise would say, you're my density.
Would Gollum have held up with the 1.21 gigawatts? I don't know, though. I don't know.
Well, his hair is already kind of toast, so I don't know. It's a good question. But the ring, that's kind of what it's like. It's like if you could actually hold the 1.21 gigawatts, that's probably what the ring does to you. Yeah.
I didn't know Sean Astin did impressions. I mean, we've had Frank Caliendo in here before, but you're
I didn't do. I mean, we can do others. I don't know. But the point is that the convention setting has all this cool stuff that people don't get. Like there's Artist Alley where comic book artists are there and they're drawing pictures, kind of responding to fans, and not just TV and movie people, but that they know. But there's like posters and it's just awesome. It's an awesome thing to do.
Now, you brought up Lord of the Rings. Which of, roles of yours do most people at these events come up talking to you about? Is it Sam or is it Rudy? Is it the Goonies? What do most people come up to?
I would say, you would think it would be Samwise Gamgee because it's science fiction, fantasy, and Lord of the Rings is a big fantasy story and everything. So, but it's actually the Goonies, I would say.
Really?
I would say more people talk to me about the Goonies and is there going to be a Goonies sequel, and Goonies was my childhood, and what was it like on the pirate ship, and people just, which is shocking.
They shout, hey you guys.
Hey you guys. Yeah, they want to do the truffle shuffle. People have tattoos. It's unbelievable, to see yourself tattooed on somebody's, shoulder. You're like, wow, I'm there with you at all times. Like, even if you don't like some movie, I'm still there. But it's the 30-year anniversary of Goonies on June 7th. 30 years ago. 1985. And it just continues to live and breathe for people. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking that it's that big.
Is there going to be a sequel?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. Maybe not in my lifetime, but it will happen. No, they
keep stoking the fire.
Well, no, it will they want it very, very badly. They just Steven Spielberg has his own time and space and the way he does stuff. Dick Donner, the director, is got the way he wants to do it, and getting those two guys to come to agreement. And they've hired a lot of different writers and developed screenplays. So they're and obviously Warner Brothers wants it because there's just this avid fan base. I always thought it should be an animated series.
Yeah.
You know, the Goonies go on different adventures every week. I thought that could be fun. So.
What was it like working with Richard Donner, who just come off of The Omen and Superman, and then
Superman? He had just done,
who wrote Jaws and everything else was right before leading up to that. So.
Well, E.T. had just come out, and Superman had come out.
Yeah.
So they were the two titans in town, and you know what? They had kind of a playful attitude about it. You know, they're like, oh, let's do a kid's picture. And then I don't know what the ultimate budget was, but it had to be like $60 million or $70 million. And, you know, that's like probably $150 in today's dollars. Yeah. I just made all that up.
That's all right. Yeah, we'll run with it.
You run with it. You go with it. Well, people, you ever know, they say, well, there's a study. Like, whose study? And how did they conduct that study? Yeah. But anyhow, it was a big, big budget movie. And I overheard Dick Donner one day talking on the phone. He was like, this is how he talks. We want to do this kid's picture. Now it's turning into this whole thing. But they also, there was a sense of whimsy about it.
Yeah.
You know, there were all these mistakes that stay in the movie. Me calling Brand Josh his actor name, and they just leave that in there. The octopus thing famously was cut out, and the character refers to it at the end of the movie, and everyone's like, yeah, whatever, you know. Yeah. So they I don't know how you capture that, like the spirit of that today. Most movies now they're designed within an inch of their life, and that one was just sort of, I don't know, one of the last kind of seat of your pants moments in film history.
And you're a child actor at this point. You probably just saw, Short Round in Temple of Doom.
I did.
Growing up, and then you're on set with him,
which was awesome.
Crazy.
Well, you know what? You definitely at that point and my mother was president of the Screen Actors Guild, the Actors Union, and my dad, and mom, my Patty Duke is her name, and John Astin's my dad, and who's Gomez in the original Addams Family, and they you just got used to seeing people that you'd see on, I remember Emergency. Yeah. You know that show? You're too young probably to know Emergency. I remember Adam 12. Yeah. Like when I was a little kid, those two shows. Yeah. Adam 12, one Adam 12. See the man on the,
They were playing reruns of that the other day.
Were they really? With those old cars with the one siren in the middle of the thing on top? Yeah. So
a little dated now, but.
Yeah, totally dated. Like they barely hold up. And yet those actors would be in our living room having, talks about what to do with the union. Yeah. So, and like you were talking about with Ke Huy Quan, who had played Short Round, I mean, they were legendary. But that's sort of what's going on with comic conventions now.
Yeah.
People can get comfortable interacting with people that they enjoy in movies and television, and that was my experience. So it actually, in a weird way, it makes movies better, because in order for you to really get lost in them, in order for them really to affect you, they have to be good. Yeah. Or else the people to your left and right, the people who are, you're working alongside, everybody expects good stuff from each other. Right. And when you include the fan base in there, that I actually think it helps. And it affects it, particularly in television shows. When you get, Big Bang Theory, which is, popularizing the idea of comic book conventions left, right, and center, and the fan base is so rabid about it, they echo each other. Yeah. So it's just, I don't know, I think it's pretty cool.
Bazinga. Echo each other.
Bazinga. I love that guy.
Let's talk Rudy a little bit.
Okay.
This is one that just personally shaped my own life. It inspired the hell out of me and probably everyone else that saw it, when they were coming up that age. This is a little, you're maturing at this point, we talked about your child actor days, but by the time Rudy comes, it's about, what do you think? 8 years after the Goonies, 93, I think. And
it came out in 93. Wow, that's weird. Yeah. 85, 6, 7, 8, 90, 91, 92. Yeah, it was 7 years. That's all? Yeah. Now I'm 44. 7 years feels like, like a season of something. Wow, that's weird.
Now that you've had some time away from it and just have, seen how inspirational it is, AFI 100 Cheers list along with your mom's Miracle Worker, it's gone down in a big...
We actually have that poster.
Really?
The AFI sent anybody who was on it.
Oh, that's great.
That poster that had the posters for. It was a big one sheet, and it had all the posters in chronological order from 1930 or whatever. That included all those. There was 100 Years, 100 Cheers, and then there was 100 Years.
They made a bunch of them. They did like one every year.
But I'll tell you what, I put that on the wall, and that was like my I have to watch all these movies list. Oh yeah. Yankee Doodle Dandy and
print it out with a highlighter, man. Yeah. That's how you go down it.
No, but to look at the posters, the one sheets, all grouped together on one page. There's something really special about that.
What does it feel to be a part of that in terms of Rudy being this legacy of an inspirational movie. It makes you cry every time at the end.
It's incredible. It's to feel like it's a great feeling, and to have my mom, Miracle Worker, and Rudy there, very, very special. I looked at that for a long time when I saw that poster, and I called my mom, and we just, you want what you do to mean something to people. You want to make a difference. So the truth is, I had just gotten married. I got married I was a little over 21, so I was pretty young when I got married. But my wife's family was from La Porte, which is just 20 minutes west of South Bend. Okay. So when we came back, kind of a year and a half into getting together, and I was like Caesar at the head of 5,000 men, like the mayor was welcoming us. We were on the cover of the South Bend Tribune, and there were the motorcades, and it was like it was sort of silly, but at the same time, the heart of that performance, the heart of that movie, like the spirit of the movie, really was me. Like it's everybody, but.
Vince Vaughn, Jon Favreau.
Right, I was just thinking of Vince Vaughn. What a career he's amassed for himself. He's just incredible. Yeah, and he cut my forehead when we were having our fight scene, in his big talons. He didn't cut his fingernail, so he gave me this cut, and then we had to match the cut. Like, it healed after a week, but it had been seen on screen bloody, so they had to keep matching the blood the whole time.
Maybe your blood is what made him Norman Bates a couple years later in the remake. You never know.
Man, that's a synergy. I can't follow that. That's too hard a thread for me. But
anyway, the heart of the movie.
The heart of the movie. I'm Rudy. You're Rudy, and when I wasn't the most talented baseball player, I wasn't the most gifted runner on the cross country team, but I wanted it. I wanted it so badly, and I tried to prove with my work ethic that I deserved a chance to get in, and not just in sports, in everything, in trying to get acting jobs, in wanting to be a director, in my relationship with my wife, like that's just who I was. So when we were doing the movie, I took it really seriously. Every day, totally focused, totally earnest about it, not kind of like enjoying the ride of it, like sitting back and smiling, and like, to me, whenever there was a moment, like the Newt Rockney speech, I was for a day just locked in my dressing room practicing that, and just wanting to make sure I got it right. When there was the crying scene when he finally gets into Notre Dame, I didn't talk to anybody for 24 hours. I just kept rereading the script and because I knew, like, my name is the title character, and it's a studio film. It was a TriStar release, and that. I felt the weight of that responsibility. So, I just am incredibly grateful. Anytime fans come up at these things, or I meet people in airports or restaurants, or like you, what you were saying, complimenting it, it really means something to me that it affected people. It has so much heart in it, and and now everybody's been saying, hey, they come up to me and they're like, Rudy was offsides. That's what everybody says. Like, there's T-shirts, Rudy was offside T-shirts, and people who are like, some people don't like the whole Rudy thing. Like, if you're an SC fan, it takes a little something to like a Notre Dame character. But my response to that is, they didn't call it.
No instant replay. That's Final Cut, frozen in time. You're tearing off the field, baby.
They have 16mm footage of it, but between.
We'll have to go back and look at the tape. But no, I think you hit the key of it in the heart of what makes it inspirational and so relatable to everybody, is that whole notion that over time, hard work passes talent after a certain point. Those two lines cross, and if you might not be the smartest, strongest, whatever, at the get-go, but if you put your time in day in and just chip at it,
Another way of saying it is it's an American movie. In the sense that, in this country, one of our core values is that, like you just said, if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, if you work hard, that you can actually advance. You can have a life that's by degrees more evolved than what your parents had. I mean, there's all this talk now about this next generation is going to be the first generation in American history, besides the Depression, where they don't make as much money. They don't, and have the same standards or whatever. Which I don't want to believe that. But there's one scene in the movie where the priest, he gets on the bus because he wants to go tour Notre Dame, and the priest is like, "Oh, Rudy, it's not for you. You should. The key to happiness in this lifetime is being happy with the gifts God's given you." And he doesn't want to accept that. And to me, that's the key thing that distinguishes America from the world, if this idea of exceptionalism, is that, like, you know what, we may have a lot of problems, and the problems may be endemic, but if we don't accept our national identity as what other people say it is, our war footing, our a lot of the things, the negative things that people say about America that are true, like, we don't have to accept that. And to me, that's what Rudy is. He's like, I'm not going to let you tell me what I'm not capable of. I'm going to decide for myself what I can do. And it's funny because he only played for 27 seconds in one game of his that wasn't significant in any way.
That's what's great about it.
Yeah.
There's so many sports movies where it's, you follow the team, and they're great in their own right. There's a place for all of it, but you follow the team in the undefeated season, remember the Titans or whatever. But this, it was almost like Rocky in a way, and that's why they'll live on. It's those little personal victories at the end that mean so much more than whether you win or not. So
there's a line in the movie where Pete, his friend, says, he says, my dad always told me that having dreams is what makes life tolerable, and
that's beautiful.
It's just a great idea that you set your goal, you set your dream, you decide what your ambition is. And there's another phrase that I like, which is your reach should always exceed your grasp, meaning like you should never 100% get everything that you want, or else it's like it's a shark, you need to always be moving. Yeah. So that idea, if you want to learn a language, if you want to travel somewhere, if you want to have kids, if you want to whatever it is, fight for it.
Yeah.
Fight for it.
Fight for it. And you fought for it, and it paralleled your own career. And suddenly, boom, 2001 to 2003, an all-timer fantasy epic with trilogy with Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings. How much did that, going into that, did you know that it was going to be this massive, were there hints that it was going to be this pop culture phenomenon, legendary film, or was it kind of a surprise?
All three of the movies that I did that I'm known for, Goonies, Rudy, and Lord of the Rings, when I got them, it was a Steven Spielberg, Richard Donner movie. They built the biggest pirate ship set on Stage 16, the biggest stage in LA. You knew it was going to be big. Right. 30 years later, people coming up to you, like, I'm 44-year-old man, people almost crash into me in their car, like, pointing at me, like, you're the kid from Goonies. Like, no, that was 30 years ago, Rudy, when I got it, you're like, the values in this movie are so important. I know this is going to go into people's hearts, and it has the ability. It was actually not a very successful film when it came out. It only made like 25 million, whereas Hoosiers, the basketball movie that those guys made like 60 million or 80 million. So it was very disappointing for the studio, and yet it's gone on to assume this life, which you sensed it could. Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, it's a trilogy. Like, they're going to do all three movies before they see that the first one is successful. They're going to pony up like $270 million all at once. You're going to make it like three movies at the same time. You knew, and then when you got down there and you saw all of the armor and all of the extras and all of the special effects makeup and all of the sets and the helicopters that we would take to the tops of these mountains, and they had 23 cameras, and it was a machine that was so big that you knew that it was something. But again, I could never have, I wouldn't have, comic book conventions, Galaxy Quest, like that Tim Allen spoof, and Alan Rickman, like the spoof about those genres, like Star Trek, and even Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I was a Star Wars guy growing up, and those were the guys that did conventions. I don't think that I even conceptualized that 15 years later I would be, going to 10 of these things a year and having people just, binge watching the movies. They'll come up and they're bleary-eyed and they're like, I just watched the whole trilogy yesterday. You're like, that's 12 hours. The extended version is 12 hours. And they're like, I know.
Three of you right now.
Right, exactly.
Shake hands with the one in the middle.
And if you say, like, people cry, they'll you shake their hand, or they'll ask you to do a line from the movie. It's like a great tales, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really matter. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. And like it ends up with there's some good left in this world, Mr. Frodo. And you do that while you're holding somebody's hand, and they burst into tears. Yeah. Like I don't know that I could have conceptualized the impact it would have had over time.
And just big picture, we mentioned AFI earlier. Lord of the Rings, when they did their most recent, I think it was their 10th anniversary of the best 100 movies ever made, Lord of the Rings was the newest one, the most recent movie that made that list.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw something, and only The Return of the King was on it, and for the few years right afterwards, all three movies were in there. Like, they weren't ahead of The Godfather. They weren't ahead of some of the movies that I can, Gandhi and some of those films that are just unimpeachably perfect. But
how do you think it changed filmmaking? Visually.
Well, that's an interesting thing. It really did change filmmaking but in the sweep of 100-year history of it, I think at least one of those, at least Return of the King does belong on that list. I mean, but in terms of how it changed filmmaking, the miniatures that they used, for example, which they called bigatures, because you would walk into a warehouse and you'd see like a really cool model train set that was 6 stories tall, that was like 50 yards long.
Yeah.
And you could go up there, you could climb up on a ladder, you could go anywhere on this huge model, and you could put a camera right up close to it, and it looked photoreal.
Right.
So, that's stunning. The digital work that they did, I was talking in this other interview today about Andy Serkis and what he did with Gollum. And, the technology that was in place at the beginning of filming was outdated by the end of filming. So they kept reshooting and redoing scenes as they got better at it. So, the sheer mastery of digital painting and digital and working with those, the motion capture. Yeah. Andy Serkis, I think,
sitting there acting across from the guy with motion capture stuff.
Well, this is the thing. They were going to do a cartoon. I mean, to put it kind of in a crude way. But they hired this guy, Andy Serkis, who I don't know how they knew Andy, but he came in with a sense of mission and purpose he was a zealot, and it was almost like too intense. But he would rehearse the scenes with us. We would then act, act them in rehearsal. Then they would film it in rehearsal. Now, it's going to be an animated character, but you're working opposite a real human being. Well, they actually would paint over him and replace those things. Then, later on during certain shots, it seemed to work well for that. Or they would, once we rehearsed it, once we shot it with him, then he would step off and we would do a pass where, it was pantomime. Yeah. And those were great. Then they would go back. And when they were animating it, there was a studio with 23 cameras up in the room, up in the in a circle around the top of the warehouse, and a floor that was a certain color. And he would wear the Lycra suit with the dots all over it. And you could sit watching a screen, and when he would turn his body or raise his hands, you would watch the avatar of Gollum doing it. So wow. And then they integrated all of those things. Then as they were painting, they're gorgeous. Just the brush strokes of what Gollum's skin looks like. Yeah. They put all those layers on it and layers on it. He would go through and he would talk to the 200 animators. He'd walk over to somebody who was doing a look where he kind of squints, and he would act out the scene for them and say what he had in mind. And they would change the squinting. You know what I mean? To look a little bit, to capture his performance. So that and now then came Avatar. Do you know what I mean? And the Avatar was standing on the shoulders of what
Andy Serkis in the Planet of the Apes.
And King Kong.
Changed filmmaking for the next. We're still.
And the other thing was performance. That the expectation for, because you can have all the miniatures, you can have all the mocap, you can have all the great, the digital armies that are battling and everything, and the sound and the music, which is incredible. But at a certain point, if you really want to care about it, you have to be able to do an extreme close-up on a couple of characters who are saying things that mean something to people.
None of that matters without the story or performance.
And the dialogue and the performance. Yeah, I mean, and so the casting of it. If you're going to do, a movie now for a studio, those casting decisions are really, really important. So, and I felt like the monkey in the capsule that got shot at, because all the work that had gone into it before I got there was just overwhelming. The costumes and the set design and how every person working on it was operating at the top of their field. So, when I got there, it was like, ooh, I just better not screw up my part. I better, when it's during those moments where I get my speeches, I better be prepared.
Well, judging by the people that are crying at these festivals, I'm pretty sure you didn't screw it up. So, thanks. We got to leave it there. But thanks so much for coming in. And you guys who listen to this, you got to go out to AwesomeCon and you get a chance to meet Sean Astin and ask him everything that we've just talked about and more. And your own chance to cry, shaking his hand.
Yeah, there's no expectation that you cry.
You must cry,
but
or you can't come.
It's entirely possible that you say something that'll make me cry. So we can kind of have sort of a dueling emotional breakdown, if you want. Or like a lot of people want to talk about 50 First Dates and the protein shakes and all that kind of stuff. So you can go in the other direction too. You can be sort of silly.
Talk to him about 24. There's a bunch you could talk to him about.
Can I just say something about 24? Because we're that's national security stuff and anthrax and all this kind of stuff. I was not a jerk in that show. Like everybody says, oh, you were such a bad guy. Like I saved Kiefer Sutherland. I saved Jack like 3 or 4 times. So I just want to defend myself.
Thank you, Jack.
Not once. Not one sort of, you were kind of tough, but I guess CTU needed to be run. I died saving everyone. And the takeaway people have is you're kind of an ass in that.
Sean Astin, thanks so much for coming in. And,
Jason, your preparation for this interview was a little intimidating. So I just want to say I'm glad that I survived your questions.
A lot of it's just stored up here, man. I don't know.
It inures to the benefit of the crazy audience. Now everybody drive carefully and stop texting.
All right. Sean Astin on WTOP.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.